Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 74 of the Parenting Autism Podcast. You can find us on the web at parentingautismshow.com, or you can reach us by email at parentingautism@att.net. Here we are on a wonderful Sunday in South Florida, and I'm joined by my wife, Sandy. How are you?
Hey, honey. I'm good.
Good. So, let's tackle some more stuff today.
Yeah, so if this is your first time to our podcast finding us, we want to say welcome. And really the purpose of this is for Chris and I to share our journey with our son, Bryce. He was diagnosed at 2. He's just about to turn 8 years old. So we've been on this autism journey for a while. And today we're going to be talking about our recent visit to a functional medicine doctor who specializes in autism.
Dun, 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 dun.
So this is our first time actually visiting a doctor like this. We have heard doctors speak that specialize, but to have the one-on-one for Bryce, this is a first. And I think, for people listening, they may not know what that means because quite honestly, I wouldn't know if I didn't have you here to tell me all this. So if I were to say what exactly is a functional medicine doctor, what would be the easiest explanation you could provide?
Sure. The easiest way to explain it is to compare it to a regular doctor, like your pediatrician doctor. So, pediatrician doctor, you come in and you have reoccurring earaches, and the pediatrician says, oh, well, you need this prescription for this reoccurring earache. So take this prescription, and then we'll see you at your next earache. Functional medicine doctor would be you come in for, you say, look, doc, the same doctor, they still have a medical, they're a doctorate, they have a doctorate degree. And you come to them and say, look, I've got this reoccurring earache. And they say, well, let's find out why you have the reoccurring earache. Let's get to the bottom of it. Maybe, I'm not a doctor. Maybe your vitamin D level's low, or maybe there's another part of your body that's not working correctly that's affecting your ears. So let's examine those possibilities. So they look for the underlying cause of whatever is happening. Yeah. And, and nothing against regular doctors. They're just trained to, you come in with a symptom and then they give you a drug for that symptom. That's just what they're trained to do, mostly. Yeah.
Okay. I get a little nervous talking about things like that because I feel like that's not my expertise either way, and I haven't gone through medical school. I know that the guy that we saw, he did go through medical school, and his experience was, I think he was a neonatal doctor, he said.
Yeah. And that's not to say, that's not to say your pediatrician won't try to get to a bottom.
Yeah, I want to be really careful with that.
But I will just say, in general, a regular medical doctor is going to look for a prescription that they can give you to solve your problem.
Well, and then if I'm hearing you correctly, if I were to take Bryce to his pediatrician, which she's fabulous, but she's not specializing in autism. Right. So to me, the difference would be I'm going to this doctor because we're dealing with much more than an earache, which was a good example. But your pediatrician is dealing with all kinds, a wide variety of illnesses that come in through the door, where this particular functional medicine doctor is, yes, he takes more of a holistic approach, is probably the word that I would use that rings a little more of a bell to me.
Yeah.
But he also is specializing in this, like you said, to dig deeper, to find out what is causing Bryce's behaviors, what is delaying Bryce's progress.
Right.
That's more what I was hearing. And that's why I think that we went and forked out a heck of a lot of money, which
Yeah.
is fine, to invest down this venture because it's not covered by our insurance because they won't recognize this. And I think there's probably another big difference is that insurance companies only recognize certain doctors and certain prescriptions, which is obvious, and certain services provided that they will cover. And this is outside of that box.
Right. I think part of the frustration among us parents is that we're finding that most pediatricians, and I just say most, they don't get the training and education on autism in medical school that they need. And then after they graduate medical school, how much education are they investing in autism to learn more about that? And it just doesn't seem like there's a lot of education among pediatricians about autism. They may know what it is and the symptoms that come along with it, but they probably don't know the inner workings of the effects of the symptoms.
Right. I was going to say, unless that's what they specialized in, or that's what they did their thesis on, or that's
Right.
something that they truly took a personal
Passion.
interest in to dig deeper. Because
Right.
again, it's kind of like if I went to my general doctor, he's just going to check in my labs,
Right.
and then if he sees there's a problem with fill in the blank, then he may refer me to a specialist for whatever it is that he may think is a bigger problem.
Right. And I think the majority of parents out there listening to us right now have had to do their own research, and it's exhausting research to get to the bottom of behaviors, symptoms, and what's going on with their particular kid. It's not a blanket thing. Just because you have autism doesn't mean this particular way is going to help your child. It's just, there's a lot of variable. You meet one child with autism, you've met one child with autism. So my frustration is, we're fortunate to have this autism doctor within a 2-hour drive of us, and that's not the case with a lot of our listeners. These doctors are few and far between, and they are in the research day and night, and they know the research like the back of their hand, what's working, what's not working. They listen to the parents. They know what's working with their patients from what the parents are telling them and the videos that they take of the children before and after the protocols that they're put on. So they're very, very thorough.
Yes, and I would say that in our situation, thanks to your research and thoroughness, you were able to provide their team a lot of information in advance.
Yeah,
which was very helpful.
Listen, we have a good relationship with our pediatrician. She, every time we go in, she's like, "Oh, I'm so thankful for the research that you do." And I basically come in and I ask for the tests that we need for Bryce, because I've done the research and, I'm looking for certain things on his blood work. And so the reason why we went to this functional medicine doctor was I felt like I was at the end of my road as far as research was going, and the rest of the stuff ahead of me was just above my grade level. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
The terminology, how the inner workings of the brain work, how the relationship between the gut and the brain, yeast growth in the gut. I'm not up to speed on all of that stuff. And I felt like we were at the point where, okay, let's go see this guy and see how much we've done, and how much more do we have to go, or what else is there for Bryce as far as help for him, and that's where we're at.
So that's kind of where we're at, and we actually came across a video of this particular doctor right within the week that Bryce started doing some more self-injurious behaviors and hitting himself in the head and just some things that you and I were like, what what is going on? I mean, it was really emerging in a whole new way that was scary to us.
And our ABA people were saying, well, maybe you need to see a psychiatrist. And, well, that's all fine and good, but what do most psychiatrists do? They give you a prescription for something. And, you know, I just didn't want to go there.
Well, yeah, I mean, everybody's case is their own. It's just we're trying to not go that route if it's not necessary. And we just felt like maybe there's something more that we can do for Bryce. And then we heard this doctor talking about when a child, and he said specifically, when a child is hitting their head, that's just not right. There's a problem there. And he's talking about the relationship with the gut and the brain. And so we looked at each other like, yes, that is our specific concern right now, among other things, but that was a headline. And so we got on the waiting list. So we've been on that waiting list for a few months, and we got in, which was fine. And I had said in the last podcast that we were going to be going, and I didn't have any expectations. And I really didn't. I went with a very open mind. I will say that coming out 2 hours later, I was very, very happy that you came out feeling happy and with hope. And that was really important to me because, I mean, just keeping it all real on here, we've had some issues in the past with depression and anxiety that you've struggled with. And some of that's even, I think, creeped up again because you've been doing so much research preparing for this. Could be coincidence. I just kind of think it kind of goes hand in hand because you've been really digging in deeper and all these problems have been coming up with Bryce. So I was concerned. You know, I feel like sometimes I have 2 patients I'm very concerned about with you know, with your frame of mind and then also with Bryce. So it was important to me that you would get out of this what you hope to have because I think you did have some expectations, maybe more than I did.
Well,
it's like for hope.
I don't think I did.
No?
I went in and like I said, I felt like I've done a lot of things, or we have done a lot of things for Bryce that are known to help with autism, like the diet. You know, we found out he was low on vitamin D, so we started supplementing him with vitamin D. We did the genetic testing. That came back pretty much normal, nothing to do with autism on that. You know, so I didn't know really what to expect. All I knew was this guy was very educated in autism. And he's had a lot of success with kids that he's seen. And he's a well-known doctor that's on the list of doctors that you would see for somebody with autism. And I think my anxiety level just happened to coincidentally be high before this doctor's appointment because I've had a lot of, I would say, projects or things that need to be done. And the living room floor, you know, we're working on that. And I did not expect to find mold under the floor when I took it up to replace it. And so that was a big deal, which put everything else that I was trying to accomplish behind. And then we thought we were going to get a nice floor and I could install it, but it turns out the floor that we bought was El Junco, and it was just falling apart as we were trying to install it. And it looked like it was hefty, but when you go to install it was terrible. So we had to take all that back. And then to find out who we thought could install it for us was another month out. I think that was the straw that broke the camel's back. I was like, I threw my hands up. I'm like, I surrender. Our living room has been dismantled for a month now. And I think that it was everything came crashing down. Like I said,
I think just to address this a little more, but, you know, with our emotions and with parenting autism and stuff, there are times that it can leave us vulnerable to where something that wouldn't normally turn something small into something big. It's like almost the gasoline has been poured on. So then the match was when they said, okay, we can't do your floor till October 20th. What? what? Because, our house is in shambles.
Right. And here...
And that is stressful for me, too, believe me.
And I tried my best to work on it.
I know.
And while I was working on it, I was taking away from Bryce's school to do that. So there was a lot of things pushing and pulling on me, and I'm like...
And that's my point. Like, life happens. So you've got homeschooling. Yep. You've got Bryce's behaviors and his health that we're trying to really get some answers for, and things that have been emerging that, have concerns for us. And then you throw in unexpected housing issues, and black mold is a big one. I mean, anyone who's listened to this podcast knows that I struggle with reflux and coughing and have been to a specialist. And so we're hoping and praying that this discovery may help my health as well. And then we know that it's not good for you or Bryce either. So thankfully it was contained to just one wall.
And
We've got it fixed,
people are probably wondering
crazy
about how we discovered it and what it looked like and all that. So I'll just briefly say that we're going to replace our laminate in our living room and with a more modern floor. And so I took up the old laminate, and I found that underneath the laminate near the front windows was just soaked. And, for the past year or two, whenever we'd come back from being away a day or two, I always smelled the smell coming in the front door. And you didn't smell it as much, but I did. And when I pulled that floor up, that was the smell that I had been smelling. So it had been that way for a while. And so we had a few mold companies come over, and the wall was not saturated, but most of them suggested taking some of the drywall out. So that was one of my projects. I took the drywall out. I had to get the mask. I had to kill the mold with peroxide. And so the bottom line was I had to re-caulk the windows, because that's where the water was coming in at whenever it rained. And down here in South Florida, I guess caulk does not last on the windows very long. Yep. And so I'm in the process of recaulking all the windows, but I got the 3 front ones done. We water tested it, and there's no water coming in, and it smells a lot better. And,
and
we're on the right track.
Flooring.
We picked out the floor, and now we have somebody coming to install it. So
we're a little happy.
We're happier now. So that's that side track.
So it's been a little drama going on around here, but throw in this doctor visit on top of all that, which again was planned months ago. It just again, been a little crazy.
And they even called me like a couple of times. Oh, we've had a cancellation. Can you come down? And we're like, no, we can't. I'm not on the spur of the moment. We just can't do that.
It worked with my work schedule. So I took the day off. We went down. We actually made it a fun little getaway and went down the night before and stayed in a hotel. Bryce loves hotels, and he always loves to stay on the highest floor. So we picked a new one that had 7 floors, and actually they had 8 floors. And they told us that we could stay on the top floor, which is 7th. So Bryce was questioning it. Why are there 8 floors and we can only stay on the 7th? So he asked, which was great. He asked an employee who worked there. And so then she explained that there was an issue on the 8th floor. Nobody could stay up there. It was a new hotel that was only like 3 months old. And then he saw fire trucks. He goes, was there a fire up there? I mean, he was like very inquisitive about it.
It was funny. The fire truck was right in front of the hotel, like something was going on, but they were checking the elevators.
Yes.
So I guess that's what the fire department does.
It was just it was great to watch Bryce, though, address these things and talk to people, because that was one of the big takeaways from this visit. So I will say that when we met the doctor, we met with his staff first, and, to compare it, for me, it felt like one of those days where I'm either at an IEP meeting where you're having to answer all these questions about your son or your child, or one of my BCBA reviews that they do once a year, where we're saying where he's improved, where he hasn't improved, where he's behind, that sort of thing. It was like that, as I put it on my Facebook post, it's one of those days that you just have to confront what you're dealing with, and you can't just put it to the side, and you have to address that, okay, he does have some deficits, but you also get to address that he has a lot of positives. And that's what we were trying to focus on. The doctor came in briefly and asked Bryce a couple questions, and he was just trying to feel him out. But most of his time was spent with us as the parents, asking us a lot of questions, but not even asking us as many questions as, like, he knew he had a certain amount of time to talk to us. And so it was like, what did you call it? A fire hose of information out of a water cup. Like you're drinking out of a fire hose. It was so much information. You feel like, I don't know. I can take all that in. It was a lot to process.
Yeah. I think he sees a lot of patients during the day, and he tries to give the parents enough information to understand where he's coming from and the path behind the root of what he's thinking, for the path forward.
I was very calm and at peace about everything. I was really just observing and listening, and then chimed in when I felt I needed to chime in. You know?
He mentioned a couple of times, he's like, oh, you've got this blood work done. We don't have to redo the blood work. I'm so thankful that you did that. You're on the gluten-free, casein-free, so you know all about that. And
what we did is IgG, so we knew what foods were sensitive.
Yeah, so
you took your poop chart, which he was impressed with your OCD poop chart.
He's like, so I always laugh when I see a poop chart. That tells me you're OCD. So, yeah, it's funny.
But one of the big goals that we walked away with was to get Bryce's bowels regulated.
Get him pooping.
That's one of the main things we're going to be focusing on. This doctor said he's seen over 8,000 patients in the last 10 or 12 years that he's been specializing in this. And
Bryce is a complicated case.
That is what he said. He said that Bryce is a complicated case. He says he maybe says that once or twice a year. And the reason why Bryce is complicated is because he had the brain seizure and because...
The stroke.
I'm sorry. He did have seizures, but it was a stroke. It was a major brain bleed. And I have always said, how can that not impact his brain in some way? I mean, it had to rewire, so somehow it rewired. And I know there's other things, but it does make it complicated. I think it's always, to me, has always made it more complicated. But the thing with that is, because we threw him that curveball, it wasn't maybe the typical protocol that he would have for other parents.
Right.
And also, we are kind of at a different stage, I believe, than most of the families that he sees.
I think, Bryce is probably further along than most of the patients that he sees. He's more verbal, more sentences.
Absolutely.
He was a little upset when we told him that we did not have a follow-up scan from the brain bleed. And he was very surprised that the neurologist did not want to take another look inside his head to see if any of it has regrown. Or what the scoop is. He's like, I can't believe this neurologist won't go back in there and want to see. And our neurologist's view was, well, he seems fine on the outside. We'd probably have to sedate him to put him in the MRI machine. So he really didn't want to do that.
Because I asked, would it be beneficial? I asked this past summer when we went, and a couple months ago, and would it be beneficial to do another MRI? And it's not like I want to make Bryce go through this, but I feel like we don't have all the answers. And the last time we actually did see anything, from the EGG for his brain, we could see that there was still activity going on inside, even though we're not seeing
the EEG.
Anything from the outside. What did I say? EGG, EEG.
Yeah.
So, and the doctor here, he was calling it like itchy brain. He's like, I'm concerned about what to prescribe him or what to recommend to do, because they're not really prescriptions, but what do I recommend that he take and what he does if he's still got that going on, because we have to be very careful that we don't want to trigger seizures.
We don't want to give him something to excite his brain if that's going to push him past the threshold of a seizure.
It's a big
he's like,
thing to consider.
he can be having seizures and it may be interrupting his thought process. It may be interrupting his language, and it's not an outward sign. You don't see an outward sign of it. So he's not, shaking or, what you would think of with a typical
or the staring off,
seizure,
that kind
right?
of thing, yeah.
So he says, and he pointed to this graphic of there's a certain type of machine that's not EEG. They don't put the leads on your head, but they can see further down in the brain, and they can locate seizures going on toward the center of the brain that the EEG does not pick up because the leads are on your scalp. They can't go deep enough to detect the seizures that are deeper. So I think our first step in that regard is to get the MRI to see if it is healing or if it is healed or if it's still there. I doubt that it's worse, but hey, it could be worse. I don't know. It might have still been bleeding the last time that we had the MRI done. I don't know.
We truly have no idea.
Don't know. So he's like, we've got to get another MRI to see where he's at. He was pretty adamant about that.
Yeah. So I think we both easily agreed that, okay, then I would say it's time for us to get a different neurologist. Mm-hmm. Every person in our life has a season, and even with doctors, they have their seasons. And, we're very grateful to our neurologist who has treated Bryce so well.
Accommodating.
Like I told you today, he gave us his personal cell number to stay in touch with him. This man genuinely cares.
He gave our diagnosis right away when he saw him.
Yes, he's been where he was supposed to be. But I could tell even this last time he was kind of like, why are you here to see me?
Yeah.
Why are you here? And, he looks great. He's doing well. And he is on many levels. And yet he's not, doing as well as we think he could possibly do. I don't know. Maybe he is, and that's what we're trying to get those answers. Mm-hmm. Is he doing the best he can possibly do? And if he is, fabulous. Right. If he's not, then what else could we possibly do to help him live his best life? It's a very delicate, tricky kind of situation here, but it's kind of the crossroad we're at. And as we were talking to him, the doctor, he was saying, okay, you have that 3 to 5 window. And I imagine a lot of his patients are in that 3 to 5 window, ages 3 to 5, because we know, and we've talked about it on this podcast, you feel like you're running a race when you first get your diagnosis, because most kids are diagnosed at age 2 or 3, and then they're like, the brain develops until 5, and then after 5 it slows down and the curve starts to flatten, and then you think if you don't see all that you need to see by 5 that you're losing hope. And I struggled with that when Bryce turned 6.
I remember that.
And, I was like, I had to really get past that. But Bryce has continued to develop even between age 6 and 8. But you know what? We are hitting another plateau. So he even said 3 to 5, 5 to 7, and then 8 to 12. Well, Bryce is going to be entering 8 to 12.
Mm-hmm. He's almost 8.
At 8 to 12, it flattens even more. And I understand what he's saying.
It's
your
not that
brain slows down the development as a rule of thumb. It still develops, just a different pace.
It's not that you can't learn anything new, because of course kids learn through high school and college, but the actual production of neurons or the growth of the actual brain slows at that time. And
I have heard that once you hit puberty and you become a teen, it picks back up again for a period of time. Just like your body has growth spurts, your brain has growth spurts. So I didn't really let that get me down this time, like not today. Anyway, I'm not feeling it, that he's going into this 8 to 12. I'm really okay with that. Again, just trying to figure out what all we can do for him. But the reality is we're going into that next level, or, what's going on there.
All right, let's take a break and we'll be right back. Okay, we're back. Our neighbor rang the doorbell. I'm like, who's that? And neighbor needed help, so we helped the neighbor.
Yeah, there we go.
We're back.
Okay, so we were talking about the doctor, and his strategy is to work from the bottom up. And he showed us like a slide that had all these different words and circles. And basically he wants to start with Bryce's gut, and his bowels, and then kind of work up toward the brain to see if we can figure out the problem. So one major thing we did was we took all of the supplements that we are currently giving Bryce. And so he looked at all of that and kind of said, yes, stay with this, stay with this. Okay, this I would change to this. We were giving him like 5,000 count on the vitamin D. And he's like, I know he was deficient, but that might be a little too much. Let's go every other day on that so he can finish up that bottle. Just like those little things in the feedback. And so we came home with a new plan for supplements. And his strategy is you start at week 1, get Bryce acclimated to that, and then keep everything from week 1, but then you build upon that in week 2, and then you'll build upon that in week 3, et cetera, et cetera. And we're going to be doing this, I think, 8 to 10 weeks is kind of what we committed to.
Yes.
Before we go back and then run some blood work and get results.
He wants, the first thing, the major priority is to getting him pooping once a day. Mm-hmm. So right now we've gotten it down to like every 3 to 4 days with the magnesium that he was taking. So now we've added a couple of more things to his regimen from the past 3 days or 4 days since we've been back. But he says once we get him pooping regularly, he gave us a kit to send away for a stool analysis. Mm-hmm. So he's like, I need to know what's going on in his gut. So once you get him pooping, do this stool analysis. We're going to send that away and get the results and find out if he has a yeast overgrowth or what exactly is going on in his gut that's causing constipation. So
I'll be very curious to see what comes back with that, because he seems very anxious to be able to
read those results.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So that's priority 1. And then, like you said, week after week, we add something else. And I think he does that. He staggers everything just in case there's an adverse reaction. Maybe something makes him too hyper or makes him too sleepy or, whatever.
Yeah. And with Bryce, he doesn't really lash out or get angry. I imagine that some children do.
May, yeah.
But, we definitely are monitoring his behaviors. Mm-hmm. And also, is this affecting his tummy? Mm-hmm. Because he has been more gassy than usual. Mm-hmm. And he says something like, my tummy hurts, but I'd never really know with him. He has
a high pain tolerance. So.
Yeah, I don't know.
But in any case, so we're working on the gut first. And then week 8, I believe we take him in for a round of blood work so that we can see where he is compared to the blood work that we've had before. And he may have added 1 or 2 new things that he wants to look at. So he wants the blood work before we come back and see him for the follow-up. And then at the follow-up, we'll go over those results and then go from there. See what improvements he's made. They'll probably do another video of him, asking him questions and playing with him and seeing if he's more interactive, more social, saying his sentences correctly, that type of thing.
Yeah, so, that was definitely something specific to come back with, again, with some hope that maybe we're on. He definitely encourages that we're on the right track, but if we can do this tweaking and see if we can see things different. He said number 2, the goal was more language and then also social for him.
Yeah, he really felt that social could even supersede school. It was that important because he said that will determine how far he goes in life, is if he can communicate with people on a certain level, and be able to have a back and forth conversation and express himself. And so I don't think he realized how far Bryce had come because he only spent a couple of minutes with him in the beginning. And he was asking us about sentences, and we're like, oh, he's saying sentences, and he's asking why. And he's like, oh, he's asking why? I'm like, yes,
all the time.
All the time he's asking why. So he's like, okay, then let me regroup on this. And if he's already doing that, then we're going to skip plan A, which was a different kind of protocol, and we're going to go to plan B for him. And, he reiterated that he's not a difficult case, but a challenge, complicated, yes, case.
And I think that was affirmation for me that our timing to go see him was good, because the reality is we've been able to
We've done
get
plan
Bryce
A.
to this point.
Yeah, we've already
which
done
is where
plan
he would
A.
have been.
Yeah.
To try to get him to 3 or 4 word sentences and try to get him to where he's asking why questions. That was our goal 2 years ago. I remember that specifically when we wrote that last IEP and we were trying to get him streamlined into kindergarten. So praise God. I mean, we've gotten that far, but we've definitely hit another wall of progress. And, for me, this is where it just like gets kind of hard for me. Like, what am I wanting? What am I expecting? I mean, he is having conversations with us. A lot of it, he's trying to learn things. He's asking us all kinds of questions about the Bible now, which is big for me because I wanted him to. And yet it's still very difficult to have these conversations with him because he gets so confused about things. And it's not easy to even explain the things that he's asking us questions about.
Because he doesn't have the grasp of that understanding.
Yeah, he just doesn't have the I mean, okay, so it's kind of funny, it's kind of not, but today we have his cousin Storm over here, and my brother came over to watch the football game with us today, and Storm went to the bathroom, and he was out of the room, and then Bryce goes, "Where's Storm? Mommy, where's Storm? Did he die? Where is Storm?" And we're like, did he die? No, he went to the bathroom. But because he disappeared, he associated that maybe he died because he knows when people die, you don't see them anymore.
Right.
So, like, that's how he processes. And again, he's about to turn 8, and that's where he's at in his processing of information.
So that's where we need to go.
We have a long ways to go.
Yes, we do have a long way to go. But I feel like
he's come a long way.
Yeah.
So,
and I feel like this doctor filled in a lot of blanks. Where do we go from here? And I think he's set for us a clear path forward, and that I feel good about. And
so what do you hope to see in 8 weeks? I mean, and besides the poop, let's go with the language.
Listen,
or behaviors. What would you hope to see?
I would love, and I don't know that it's going to happen over 8 weeks.
I know. I'm just asking what you.
But I'd love to see an improvement. And I don't care what kind of improvement it is, but I would like to.
In any area?
And this reminds me about what he said about stimming. Bryce stims a lot. He flaps his hands. And he was explaining to us in the brain that when you stim, that means the communication in the brain missed its mark. So, like, there's an electrical signal that started somewhere that told Bryce that he was excited. But instead of either going to the language part of his brain to say that he was excited, or the feeling that he's excited, going to that feeling that he's excited, it went to his motor part of his brain and does the flapping, you know? So that was an aha moment for me.
It was an aha moment. I agree.
I'm
it
like,
was for me as well.
Wow, okay, I understand that. And
then when I pointed out to him, I said, well, I know his brain rewired in some ways, but I also know it's fairly common with autism that sometimes the pronouns get mixed up. But Bryce mixes up his pronouns still some. We've worked on it, but he'll mix up that. He'll mix up our names. He mixes up a lot of things. Like, things just aren't firing correctly.
And like what I explained to you the other day, we were doing school, and he had to do, I think we were working on math, and he had to write the number 3. He's like, "Daddy, can you write it for me?" I'm like, "No, you have to write it." He's like, "Can you show it to me?" I said, "You don't remember how to write a number 3?" And he says, "No." And I mean, he's written a lot of 3s.
And he recognizes all of his numbers and letters.
It was very interesting to me that he needed me to write the number to show him. And it wasn't like write it on my paper as part of the answer, Daddy, to do it for me. It was show it to me on a different sheet of paper or on the whiteboard. He didn't care where I showed it to him. It's not like he was trying to convince me to do the work for him.
No, he just needed to see it so that he could do it.
So he could write it.
Yeah. It's very interesting. I mean, there's no doubt his brain is complicated.
There's some connections that are
and there are some things. So that's, hey, if this can improve that for him at all, it's just going to give him a better quality of life and less frustrations. And I think that's my end goal for him, that it will be that he'll have less anxiety and he'll have less frustrations. And I hope this does help him with his anxiety and worrying about things.
And, he was reiterating, get him into social situations as much as you can so that he can learn more of the language, so he can hear how it's spoken, so he can receive it. And learn how people talk back and forth.
In a natural environment.
Because
what he was pointing out is very true. If Bryce's exposure is limited to therapists, for the most part, therapists, and I hear it too, speak to him in a really slow, distinct manner in certain ways because they're teaching him language in an educational way, more than a real life way. So with us, I will hear myself sometimes speaking very slowly to him if I need to get a certain point across. But for the most part, I'm very chill like this, and we do use a lot of slang with him that he may not understand. But then he'll ask us, what does that mean? Or it confuses him. And that's okay. Sometimes I put it out there just because other people are going to put it out there for him. And I want him to either learn how to ask if he doesn't understand what it is or maybe learn what it is, Trying to give him more of that natural environment is a good goal, whether it be with an adult or whether it be with a peer. I know that children tend to learn more from children, and that's why it's encouraged so highly for them to have social activity. But it also depends what children you have him around as to what behaviors he will have. And that's with typical children too.
One other thing that comes to my mind that he doesn't do right now, and he's never really done, is when somebody comes to the door, he opens the door and he doesn't say a word.
Nope.
Like the other person will say, "Hi, how are you, Bryce?" And it's like all of a sudden he's mute. It's like
it freezes him up. And I'll even say before we go there, because that's something we're working on. It's on one of the
before
goals.
we answer the door, we'll say, make sure you say hi.
Yep.
And then when the door opens, nothing.
Nope. He just kind of gets this shrug, shoulder shy thing and turns around.
And
so maybe it's just too hard for him looking at them. I mean, there's something there.
Maybe there's just too much. It's an overload of information coming in, about who this is, what they're doing here, what are they going to do? Are they here for me? Are they here for mommy and daddy?
Even when Miss Melanie comes and he knows who she is and he knows why she's coming,
I know
he can't give her a proper greeting. So we even worked at it at mom and dad's, and he was just like, "No, mommy," So there's some reason that it's hard for him, and I think it's legitimately hard for him, but he can't express to us why.
Right.
So, if you can't get past that, that's kind of our point, is trying to help him with these little things that's going to help him progress further.
Listen, what's the first step in making a friend? You say hello. Mm-hmm. You say hi to somebody. I mean, we got to get him past that. it's
Okay, so one of the things that we're trying is he will now FaceTime with his little friend Michael. And they're playing a game together, which is great. And we can hear the conversations going back and forth. And there really are conversations going back and forth between them. Mm-hmm. And I love it. I heard Michael, I think it was last night, he's, "Bryce, stop asking me about the music, okay? Bryce, do you understand me? You've already asked me about that music 4 times. Stop asking me about the music."
You gotta love kids.
And Bryce went, "Okay."
Okay.
But you and I were laughing and we're like, yes, that's what he needs.
We don't do that for whatever reason.
I mean, well, we might say we've already heard, but it's great coming from a peer.
Yes.
It's great coming from a friend. And Michael's not trying to be mean about it. And listen, Michael handles Bryce so well. But I loved hearing him tell me. And then Bryce heard it and he's like, "Okay," and he did it. He didn't ask him any more about it.
He recognized the problem, and he forfeited.
So we're trying to get him and Michael together even 2 to 3 times a week for that social interaction, which we didn't have that before, and that's big. Mm-hmm. And now at church, he's no longer in the isolated buddy room when he when it's the right person there for him, he's actually going into the children's studio.
And he's liking it.
And he's really liking it. He's participating in the questions and in the dance time. He gets a prize for
bringing his Bible.
And then he's seeing, 30, 40 other kids doing other things. And this is what we're talking about. Like, even if it doesn't have to be social where he's sitting down and having a back and forth conversation with them, it's also social where he's observing. Like, what do they do?
Just being in the same room.
I should do that. Oh, they're doing that? Okay, I will do that too. Oh, they're having fun and dancing? Okay, I want to do that too.
Yeah.
That's great social for him. So, yes, we have some one-on-ones. I know you're going to look into this other place where he may be able to get some more social activity that's on a homeschool level. And, you and I had already talked about homeschooling and saying, yes, we know it's important to teach Bryce, and I do think it's very important to teach him the basics of education, getting him to read, getting him his basic math, getting him a lot of things that's going to help him with life skills, be able to communicate with other people, understand his world around him, and eliminate anxiety and frustration, because now that he can read, that has helped him tremendously. In so many ways, even with the anxiety. But we also have talked about, if it doesn't help him in his future, ditch it. That's why you're the teacher, and we have the ability to do that and still give him the core education he needs, but we also have to get him social. So that's why, we have so much time that we dedicate to school and education, but also so much equal time, if not more, dedicated to his therapies, which this doctor was all about, keeping his therapies. Very important for Bryce. But we just have to keep that social, which, I've been a big component about that.
And what else is, I've also heard that if you can get the brain functioning properly, then the therapy will start to work even better.
True.
So you can only get so far in therapy with the brain. It's like a car that has an engine miss, working on not all the cylinders, and it's going to have trouble getting up the hills. But if you have the car running good, you're going to get up the hill and then beyond, So I'm very hopeful in this new protocol that we have to be able to, if his brain gets better, then he'll start excelling in the speech and the language and the OT that he's doing.
Yeah, and we've recently discovered that I think sensory has a lot to do with this as well, because if his mind is so distracted because he can't process so many things and has so many sensory issues, that's going to prevent his ability to focus and learn as well. And not only that, but interact and social and all of that.
And what did the doctor say when we told him, once we put him on the diet, we were seeing all this vestibular input that he needed, like going upside down on the couch? Do you remember what he said?
Well, that was because, and we said it happened after the diet, and it's because it removed all the crap, all the bad stuff out of him, all the junk, and we knew that's what happened. I mean, he was out of the fog.
Yes.
Is what it was. But now it's like, woo, okay, we got to help him. He doesn't know what to do with all this.
Yeah.
And so, we've talked about it, and we've got that machine that will help him, which we need to just make that part of his daily routine.
Yeah, what's that thing called? The upside down table?
Inversion
table.
Yeah. So, we just got to make it consistently, just like supplements. Listen, we keep, Chris and I are very good about keeping a lot of charts. But you have to do that. I can't remember all this stuff, and you could ask me what we did last week, and I'm not going to be able to tell you. I might think that we did it 4 times last week, and when in reality we might have done it 1 or 2. Right. So if we write these things down, then the headlines, like right now it's supplements, bowel movements, and I think we should also record how many times we do the machine with him, because I find that's important for him.
Sure.
And then I'm getting him to the Defy exercise place once a week so he can kind of get that outlet. And so we're just working on those kind of things. And
I don't think we really need to go over what supplements he's on right now, because of course, we haven't really seen any improvement because we just started it. And B, every child is different, according to their symptoms, their blood work, and their personal, condition. So,
correct.
And I'm on a lot of autism groups, and I see, somebody will post, has such and such worked for anybody, and 50% of the people come on and say, oh yes, it's done wonders for our son, or we've seen this improvement, that improvement, and then the other half will say, no, we tried it for 3 years and nothing, or we were on it for 6 months and we didn't see any improvement at all, or it caused aggression when we tried that, or so
everybody's different.
It's just a mixed bag, and every kid is different.
It is, and that's why when we decided to do this podcast, I'm like, we just have to keep this about Bryce, and we're not people out here giving advice and saying try what we do. We're just saying, hey, this is what we've discovered, this is what works for us, and if you think it can help,
right,
we're just sharing.
We can say what we've tried and what we've seen,
but to the point that we're saying it works for some and it doesn't work for others. Another thing that he said that he doesn't say to maybe once or twice a year to his patients is that he thought the oxygen chamber, the hyperbaric chamber might be beneficial to Bryce because it might just kickstart something that didn't get kickstarted because of the brain damage that was there from the bleed.
Yeah.
And that's why he said I maybe say this once a year, twice at the most to any of the families because
it costs a lot of money.
Yes. And so ironically or divinely, you don't know which way, but you got a post that came up about that through the Taka Facebook post. And so you told me to read it. And it was talking about using the chamber and people's feedback. And again, it was hit and miss.
Mixed,
because every person's different. And then one parent said, oh, yeah, we use it. We love it. Another one said, they call them dives every time you go in. Yeah, we did
a dive.
50 dives. No, they did a lot of dives, and it worked while we were doing it. But as soon as we stopped, it no longer worked. Well, how disappointing would that be if you have to be dependent on that for your life? I mean, you'd have to own the machine, not rent the machine,
Yeah, and we talked to him further toward the end of our session with him, and I just wanted to reiterate, I'm like, okay, so we're going to go through these protocols with you, and then the hyperbaric chamber's kind of on the back burner until we connect all these dots. And he's like, yes, exactly.
Yeah, he kind of said, it's a very expensive, and unless, but if you fall into a lot of money, yes. That's how you put it. Then it's something I would definitely say that you should look into. It wasn't like this is going to save the day.
No.
If I thought that it would, well, we'd have one.
Right.
But I know there's other families that have tried it and it didn't work. So you just don't know. You have to, you just have to go with what is going to be best for your family and for your situation and follow that path.
Yep.
We're people of faith, so we do a lot of praying, and the messages at church lately, the whole series has been about the Holy Spirit and listening to the Holy Spirit. And I really have been praying for discernment on this journey because there's so many decisions to make. And I think that's one thing that I took away from this. I was very quiet when we left because
there was a lot of information.
It was a lot of information. I said, I don't know I can talk about it yet. I needed to really process a lot. But I felt the weight of the responsibility of being Bryce's advocate when I left. And I didn't tell you in those words till now, but I did feel a very heavy weight on my heart about that because here we are going to somebody and trusting this person's recommendations, and we are putting now all of these new things into Bryce's body and his system and seeing how he responds to it when he does have possibly activity still going on in his brain. And, we've made a lot of wonderful decisions for him, and I feel encouraged by that. I feel assured by that, we have been led, by God to do many right things for him, but yet it's still a burden that we're going to carry all of our lives, I believe, making these kind of decisions for him. He asked us, do you see him living independently? I mean, he's pretty upfront about it. He kind of just wanted to know where we stand. And again, Bryce is only turning 8. But if you ask me today, no. I can't even imagine him living independently. Could things change? Absolutely. But is the window getting smaller for that opportunity? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do I have to come to terms with that? Absolutely. You know, so those, our decisions get based on those kind of forecasts, you know, that are out there, and
he's
dealing with that reality.
Now, and I feel like we need to plan as if he's not going to be able to live on his own independently. I feel like I would be a failure if I didn't, you know.
We wouldn't be wise if we did not plan that way.
If we didn't plan that way.
Listen, it could all change.
Failure to plan is planning to fail.
Yes, and I believe that with Bryce, I know you had mentioned college fund the other day, and hey, if it can go to college, great. I'm just trying to get him to where he can work a trade, or we've even talked about starting some type of business that Bryce can do and continue to earn income from. And that's probably the path we're going to look for him. We're entrepreneurs. You know, we've got that creativity, and I really want to see what his interests are and his talents and his skills, and help prepare him for his future. But it's not going to be in the typical fashion. I don't see him going to 4 years college and then trying to get a job and having, again, I could be wrong. And if that's the case, okay, we'll follow that path. But I think we have to be wise, and we have to recognize and acknowledge what we're dealing with. And then this is going to give us even more answers how to help him and how this will help him and help him live his best life. So that's kind of where we're at after this.
I think we'll know within the next year, and I'm guessing, but I think we'll know within the next year if we've hit on something that is going to get him over the hump here, you know, like catching up.
I think every year
are we going to be
see
catching up? But we're starting something new now. And you know what I mean? So I guess what I should say is I think we'll know within a year from starting this new protocol if it's going to help him catch up or not.
Well, or bridge that gap. Because he's continued to progress.
He's progressing, there's no doubt.
He's probably continuously of
2 to 3 years behind.
Yes.
Yeah. Even though he is at his appropriate grade level in school,
academically,
and he is
no problem.
learning those things, his understanding of things is still
definitely
2 to 3 years
cognitive,
behind. The social, the
comprehension.
Yeah.
It's just like putting it all together.
Yeah.
It's tricky for him, but he's doing so great. So again, Bryce is complicated. What can we say?
Yes,
you know, it's okay. But I'm, again, just so grateful that he's happy. Like I was watching him today, and he came out of church, and then he's doing his little flapping and jumping, and he's so happy. And I looked at you, and I'm like, that's what I want to keep. I don't want any of these things that we're doing to destroy the joy that is in that boy.
He's got
and
joy.
I'm very, very aware of that. And again, part of that advocacy and the way that I feel being called to be his parent with you is we've got to protect that for him. I just don't want that to go away. And I just want to help him even be happier all the time, you know, and remove those fears and those anxieties.
Right. He does have a lot of anxiety.
He does. And
that's another thing we're trying to tackle.
That's what I hope we get out of this, you know. I've written down, you know, what is my goal for this? And it's the ability to be able to communicate his thoughts and his emotions and his needs more clearly. If all these changes can help him communicate those things more clearly, that's a win for me.
Awesome.
Okay, last thing I'm going to share.
Yep.
And we're going to wrap this up. I heard this on a podcast this week, and it really resonated with me. And I want to share that for all the listeners, is the word hope. And I forget what they call that when each letter stands for something.
Acronym?
Maybe, but I think there's another word for that.
Okay.
But basically, if you say hope, it's hold on, pain ends. That's your HOPE.
Hold on,
hold
the pain
on,
ends.
Pain ends. Don't give up hope. Wherever you're at on this journey, don't give up hope, because it is going to get better. And sometimes it feels like, oh, is this ever going to end? I'm so down. I can't get back up. but hold on. The pain will end, and you're going to find that joy again. It's just baby steps, and you just got to make that U-turn and start going back up. And I really found that encouraging when I heard that, and I wanted to share that to our listeners, because I know there's a lot of hurt on this journey, but there's also a lot of hope in this journey.
Cool.
So
very good advice. And if anybody out there would like to leave us a review on iTunes or Spotify or whatever platform you're listening on, we surely would appreciate it. It'll help other people tune in and hear what we have to say. And we get a lot of feedback that people just like how authentic we are, and they love our podcast and our stories with Bryce. And we appreciate that feedback when they send us an email or whatever. So
we do, and we're really happy that we're able to share our journey and help each other along the way.
And if you don't know how to do the review, I know on iTunes, if I'm in the podcast and I have our logo up on the screen, you just scroll down to like where the episodes are, and if you just keep scrolling, there's a spot where it'll say write a review, and you can put the stars in there and then words under that. So
that would be great.
That's how you do it. And that's episode 74, and we'll see you soon. We'll talk soon.
Actually, we're going to go away for a couple of weeks. We got family coming down from Maryland. So we'll be back in October after Bryce's birthday.
Yeah.
And we'll look forward to chatting with you then and catching up on the journey.
See
All
ya.
right. Bye.
Bye.